Well, today's Mother's Day, in case you somehow missed it. It's been 102 years since it was recognized as a holiday by President Woodrow Wilson as a national holiday, even though, of course, it had been going on for a while before that. And even though it does seem to have become quite commercialized, I have read that there's more flowers sold for Mother's Day than for Valentine's Day. And actually, if you think about just like how many flowers were set out at the Fred Meyer, there's way more this week than there was at Valentine's Day. At least it seemed like it to me. So, and it was, the original intent though, was just to celebrate one's mother. And it was chosen on a Sunday because Sundays are holy days. And did you know that there's versions of Mother's Day celebrated around the world in many different cultures? So if you're curious, more curious about that, there's a great list on Wikipedia. So while we can celebrate mothers all around the world and give thanks for our own mother, of course, I'd like to broaden the focus to celebrate the nurturer in all of us. Because, you know, traditional gender roles will tell you that it's a woman's job to nurture and a man's job to protect. But that's really a hard sell for me, and I believe that we all have the nurturing capacity in us, as well as a capacity to protect and take care of in those ways. And both should be celebrated and grown in their own healthy ways. And in fact, there's many studies that have been done around compassion, and they conclude that the instinct to care for another, there's no gender difference. None. So, that probably wasn't any surprise to any of you, but so there you go. And something I didn't know until I was an adult is that the story of what happened right after I was born. My mother was busy having complications and trying not to die. And meanwhile, I was doing a really good job of screaming my head off. My mother would say I haven't been quiet since. But my mom says that what my dad did, he was there and he was holding me and carrying me back and forth in the delivery room while all of this was going on. And that was the first act of nurturing for me outside of out of the womb. And I think that that might have been part of the reason why my dad and I always had such a strong bond. And we know that the nurturing connection goes beyond parents and often includes siblings. Some friends of mine, so Zion, when he was 9, he had a baby sister, Ina, and his mom would say that no matter how deeply involved in whatever he was doing, even if it was having an argument with her, that if Fina started crying, everything stopped until whatever it was that she needed was taken care of, and that she was okay. And also, another little act of nurturing from little Zion, he would actually offer to keep an eye on Fina for a few minutes so his mom could actually have a few moments for herself, which is a wonderful gift. But what about people we don't even know? I mean, some siblings, I mean, that makes sense, right? But what about people we don't even know? Several years ago, another friend of mine, Tiffany, and her 5th grade at the time daughter, Kaylee, they were driving down the highway, and they came upon an accident that had just happened involving a semi and an SUV. So Tiffany pulled over, and she went over to the SUV and found a couple and their 2 young grandkids. And so Tiffany scooped up the kids and took them over to her car and put them in the car with Kaylee, and then she went to help the adults with adulty type things. And Kaylee just sat with those kids and comforted them and helped them feel safe and secure and entertained and distracted in what otherwise would be quite a scary kind of situation. And so it's not just people even. So, I mean, this is not, probably any of these stories are actually really that surprising to any of you, but let's kick it up another notch. These acts of compassion happen in the animal world as well. There was this couple, and you can find this video on the internet, it's pretty great. There's a couple who has a farm in Ireland, and they decided that they wanted to add ducks to their menagerie. And so they got some fertilized eggs, and soon they hatched, but the couple couldn't find the ducklings anywhere. And finally, a couple of hours later, they see their barn cat with a duckling in the mouth. And they think that this is dinner time. This is it for the ducklings, of course. But then they realize that the cat is just carrying the duck. And then they find that this cat has just had her kittens, and she has taken on these ducklings as kittens, her kittens. And so they're like getting ready to move the mama cat and the kittens to somewhere that's a little more, secure, where they want the mama cat and the babies to be. They pick up the mama cat and realize, so here's something really interesting. So apparently ducks are born ready to go, ready to scavenge for food and do things on their own. These baby ducks had figured out how to nurse. And of course, the ducklings grew much faster than the kittens, but you can see the little video, and there's the mama cat, and she's got the cats around her, and then the ducks are following her, across the farm, and it's really cute. Apparently, in those hours surrounding the birth, the mom has these hormones that just make her care for anything that's small and fluffy. And the ducklings happen to be there right at the right moment for that to happen. So mother hormones, that's real stuff. Studies and anecdotes don't stop. I mean, they go on and telling you that these things are true. But I want to tell you more about my mom. So after the experience of having me, which she barely survived, having another biological kid, probably not a good choice. So my parents decided to adopt. Now, adopting a special needs kid is not for the faint of heart. It means doctor's appointments and school meetings and unending advocacy and a level of involvement that doesn't taper off as they get older and go off and do other things. That's not how it works. Now, my mom managed to do all of this while homeschooling me and running a small business. And there was no mothering hormones set off in the judge's office while there was paperwork being signed. So I can't say that the instinct to nurture is any less for my sister than for me. So it's not just, hormones. And there are many people who have taken the role of caring for someone they didn't birth. There are many women who nurture and care for the children of this world when they don't have any of their own. And I just want to take a moment and pause for these women. To the foster moms who care for a child at the moment's notice, who really need a safe place to be. To the auntie who takes on the kid the parents can't take care of, we thank you. To the teacher that mentors, teaches, and loves young minds, you are very important. To the scout leader, the youth group leader, the big sister, camp counselor, and coach, thank you for being a mentor, support, and safe adult when a parent can't be. To the second moms, godmothers, grannies, and families of choice, thanks for being a safe place for kids to hang out. We all need them. To the stepmoms navigating often complex relationships, you are the unsung hero. And to adoptive moms, you've changed a life for good, forever. Now, some of us are childless by choice, and others have experienced the heartbreak of infertility or miscarriage, and some have lost a child to violence or abortion or many other reasons. And we mourn with these people. Some women didn't find the right partner, or they had physical limitations on their ability to carry a child, and some, out of circumstances, have relinquished a child to custody so that they could be adopted and have a better life. And so while this day is cheerful for some, it is tricky for others. And if you're feeling sadness on this day, It's okay. And I'm holding you in my heart, and I have hugs. And I recognize and honor the bravery to be here today. And let's also recognize those who might be feeling sadness because maybe their mother has passed on. And for the people who have hurtful or complicated relationships with their mom or with their children, and they don't know how to respond to this day. You too are brave, and we still have more hugs. And for the rest of you, I ask you to join me in lifting up these dear ones in our prayers and choosing caring words on this day, because it's not a wonderful, great day for everyone. And I just think it's important to say that because we forget. So let's get back to the nurturer in all of us. The definition of nurture is to care for and encourage the growth and development of. And that's something we all can do. And obviously we think of the folks in the health and wellness field, of course. They are nurturers, including all the dedicated friends and family members who help their loved ones when they come home to heal of major and minor boo-boos. And I think of James Herriot, the famous veterinarian who took care of animals and was very inspiring, I think, to many people. But more personally, when I think of kind of the nurturer you wouldn't think of necessarily, I think of this guy named Doug. He takes care of the flowers, and particularly the rose garden at Unity Village. Now, many of you I know have seen pictures of Unity Village and the beautiful gardens, and there's hundreds of roses and many other plants and trees to take care of. This is a big task, all season long. And of course, the season in Missouri is a lot longer than the season here. And there's a monitoring of the plants, and ensure their health, and make sure there's not weeds or pests, and watering the ones that aren't on sprinklers, and keeping everything in tip-top shape, because of course lots of people have their weddings and stuff there, so it's always got to be in tip-top shape. And from mid-spring through fall, you can bet you'll find Doug somewhere on the gardens doing his thing. And if you talk with him briefly, he's very modest about the whole thing, but you can tell that he cares so much about those gardens. And he is certainly using his divine gift of nurturing to work with those plants and flowers and share that gift with so many. Now, there are many stories involving mothers and nurturing in the Bible. Probably first on many people's thoughts would be Jesus. Jesus' mother Mary. That's kind of an obvious choice. There was Sarah, who was too old to bear children. And we have Leah and Rachel, the sisters who bore the 12 tribes of Israel. Elizabeth, who was the mother of John the Baptist and Mary's cousin. But those are all stories for another day. Today, we travel to the second chapter of Exodus, where Pharaoh was getting kind of nervous about how many Hebrews there were. It's like he had a premonition that something was up. And so he gave the order to kill all the Hebrew boy babies at birth. Now, there was this one woman, and she managed to hide her son for 3 months, but she knew that this was not going to last forever. So she put him in a basket and floated him in the Nile, while his sister watched to see what would happen. Well, luckily, the basket was spotted by Pharaoh's daughter, who was down at the river to bathe, and she decided to keep him. And she saw the sister watching what was going on, and she had the sister said, go find someone who can come take care of this baby. So, of course, she went and got her mom. And so now Moses is being taken care of by his mom, but under the auspices of the Pharaoh's daughter. Pretty great, right? He, of course, came back later and freed his people from the oppression of Egypt, so Pharaoh might have been on the right track there, but kind of. So this is a story of two brave mothers. Moses' birth mom was probably risking her life. Not probably. She was risking her life to keep the baby alive. And she was very smart in her plot to get him adopted. Though it would have been difficult, no doubt, to take the risk and let him go down the river. She would have also probably seen that she really didn't have any other choices. Pharaoh's daughter undoubtedly would have been in a big trouble, and I don't know how much trouble, but they weren't very kind those days, so it could have been a lot of trouble. If her father had found out where she got this child and that he was a Hebrew baby, she knew that. But all she saw was a baby that needed to be cared for, and so she gave him the best protection she could. Membership in the royal family. Could be better than that. So this is a story of different ways of caring for others. Sometimes it is to be the mother. Other times it is to care for the being who has shown up in front of you or floated in front of you. Sometimes it may even involve risk to nurture and protect those you care for. But would any of the people that I've talked about so far today had wanted it any other way? So we've talked about nurturing in the many ways it can show up. Let's talk about how we can develop this spiritual tool that science has proven that's innate in all of us. So let's look at where we already are. What people, places, relationships, and ideas do you already nurture? Your friends and family, which not only care for and nurture in body, but in relationship. Your beloved pets, your garden, a cause. Are there people or things on your list that maybe it's time to bump up that relationship, that connection of nurturing? I have a friend who says the relationships are like a bank account. When you spend time and take care of one another, it's like putting deposits in the bank account. And then, inevitably you might run against rough times, or one of you is really having a hard time and you kind of need to take some deposits from the bank account. And what you do if you're overdrafted is a conversation we're going to have on a different day. But I suggest you consider what accounts you might want to make more frequent deposits in. And maybe there's ones you don't need to or want to. That's okay too. So what relationship accounts are you depositing in, and do you want to make a conscious decision to deposit in? And next, you might want to consider what you want to bring forth to nurture. Some of you know I've started a container garden. I go and talk to my potatoes every day. And I love to go see how they're doing and everything, and there's more that's going to come. We just haven't figured out what yet. And I love doing that and seeing something grow that I have something to do with. And maybe your thing to nurture is to volunteer somewhere, or to offer to watch a loved one's kids so they can take a break. And if you pause and open your heart, what is yours to do? It'll become clear. You'll see what's yours to do. The most important one, though, this is kind of the homework one, the practice all the time one, the don't forget one. This is the care for ourselves one. You knew it was coming, didn't you? I can see you. The most important is to care for ourselves. And I know, there's only so much time in the day, but it matters. What are the things that nurture you? Is it a bath, a walk in nature, connecting with a friend, getting a massage, reading a book, practicing an instrument, cooking, or baking? I personally love to walk around the library. It's just something that really, it's not the only thing that nurtures me, but I just love to walk around the library and see what falls off the shelf. It's great. It makes me, I just, love it. You have to take care of yourself. Endless sacrifice with no chance of yourself to recharge will likely leave you feeling irritated, resentful, and worse, which is super fun, right? And another way, like the subset of ways to nurture yourself, is to unplug. Now, some of you may not find yourself looking at a computer or smartphone all the time, but for those of you who do, consider leaving it in another room while you're having, time with other people or doing something you enjoy. I also know a lot of people who just like to leave the television on, and it's just on. And you probably know people who do this too. I'm not asking any of you to admit if you're one of those people, but turn it off. Sit in the silence. Don't let all of that just talking invade your mind. And if you don't like the silence, if the silence makes you too uncomfortable, turn on some instrumental music. You get to choose what is coming into your world. Nurture yourself. Slow down the flow of information. So on this Mother's Day, celebrate the people who have nurtured you. Embrace and encourage the nurturer in you. And always remember to nurture yourself.